Greg Ehrenberg here from Awesemo.com, and I'm bringing you the best tournament plays for Thursday night's MLB slate. This is the FanDuel video, and one thing to point out, the FanDuel slate, different than the DraftKings slate today. It starts about 30 minutes earlier, which as a result, it includes two games that are not on DraftKings. So the San Francisco-Miami game and Washington-Cincinnati, those are two games that are being included on the FanDuel slate that are not on the DK slate. So just keep that in mind as you're building your lineups first. Make sure that they're in on time since it locks earlier. And then also, don't forget that there's also a couple extra games to look at. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and shout out to PrizePicks, the sponsor of today's video. If you're signing up at PrizePicks for the first time, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to a $100 bonus in your first deposit. Nothing wrong with a little bit of extra money in your wallet. Also, leave a comment below because I want to hear who you guys are targeting as your favorite tournament plays of the slate. But I'm going to get into it right now, and I don't want to stretch too thin looking at tournament options because overall this is still a smaller slate, and I want to try to focus on what I think are the best tournament options, especially for people who are playing some single entry and looking for players that are going to be lower owned. So for my favorite tournament stack today, I'm opening up with the St. Louis Cardinals. So the Cardinals only projected for 1.7% ownership with a 5.2% chance to be the top stack. So this is the number one most positively leveraged team on FanDuel in our top stacks tool. And I think a lot of this just has to do with the uncertainty surrounding Keegan Thompson. He's going to be starting against the Cardinals, and he's mostly pitched out of the bullpen this year. We've only seen him start a limited amount of times, 3 starts, and even those 3 starts, he's made relief appearances in between. So it's hard to know exactly how stretched out he is. But in addition, he's been much more effective as a reliever than as a starter this year. I'll compare some of the numbers here. So we've got with Thompson. As a reliever, he has a 2.29 FIP as a reliever. So really, really solid numbers. But as a reliever, he's just been better than as a starter, which should be expected. It's easier to pitch 1 or 2 innings at a time than it is to be a starter where you're going deeper into games. So 4.43 FIP for Thompson as a starter. So just to reiterate, 4.43 FIP as a starter, 2.99 as a reliever, so less effective. And this really gets amplified in the strikeout rate because Keegan Thompson has an 18.2% K rate as a starter, but 25.3% as a reliever. And I just look at some of these numbers as red flags when it comes to Thompson. Is he going to be able to maintain his effectiveness when he's pitching over 4 or 5 innings, as he's been able to do when he pitches 1 or 2 innings? And while it's a small sample size, some of the early indications are no. And the one that I really like to point to is that dip in the strikeout rate, because 7% is a really, really significant drop off. The Cardinals offense, it is better against lefties than righties. But even with that said, I have enough concerns about Thompson. And that combined, we're just seeing no ownership going to the Cardinals. 1.7% as a team, just to reiterate. So I'm willing to take a chance on that low of ownership against a pitcher that I really have some question marks about. So Cardinals, my number one favorite tournament stack on FanDuel today. And then when I get into the pitching, I really like Tony Gonsolin. He was somebody I also said I liked for DraftKings today. There are some higher end pitchers that are going to be popular today. And we look at guys like Sandy Alcantara. He's projected for 15% ownership. Sean Manaea, 21.6% projected ownership. Alex Wood, 33.6%. And with all the ownership going to these guys, Gonsolin is kind of getting lost in the mix because the field is only rostering him 2.6% of the time. That's currently his projected ownership. But look at the top pitcher odds for Gonsolin compared to these other guys, because we have Gonsolin projected with an 8% chance to be the top scoring pitcher, 9.8% for Wood, 11.4% for Manaea, 12.7% for Alcantara. So clearly the numbers for Gonsolin are slightly lower than the other guys, but not to the point where we should see somebody like Sean Manaea projected for 7 or 6x the ownership of Gonsolin, which is currently what the case is. So I like Gonsolin as a really good pivot off of some of those more popular starting pitchers. And then you also just look through Gonsolin's numbers this year. He's been really, really good. 1.8 ERA, 2.48 expected ERA. And the sticking point with Gonsolin has always been how deep is he going to work into games? How many innings are the Dodgers going to let him throw? How many pitches is he going to be allowed to throw? And that was a really legitimate concern at one point for Tony Gonsolin, and why I thought for tournaments, he was generally going to be a write-off for me. And I only started rostering him recently, and this is why. 3 straight starts of 90-plus pitches. So I think last start was the first time I'd really ever rostered Gonsolin. That was in a start against the Diamondbacks, just because I never had confidence that he was going to work deep into games. But he's pitched so well this year that I think the Dodgers are just kind of forced to let him throw deeper into games, and he's responded well to this point. So Gonsolin, 9,800, 2.6% ownership. It's an expensive price tag, but I think it's a good pay-up spot to be contrarian considering how well Gonsolin has pitched this year. That is going to do it for the top FanDuel tournament plays of the day. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, shout out to Prospects once again for sponsoring the video. Good luck tonight, everybody.